Working in the wellness industry has been such an amazing journey from a dance studio owner focused on curriculum and lesson plans. When I first learned about the tools in bioenergetic wellness and had the experience of biofeedback through muscle monitoring, it blew my mind. Now I have to say it really blew my mind. I also learned about how to create goals and intentions for profound results. And in these last few years, the science of intention has been more realizing about its potential, but also the important key tools that come from biofeedback and creating balance and flow. All of that has completely changed my world. Being one with the universe is a phrase that people will often say, or love is universal. And what I have been absolutely thrilled with is the meaning of complete synergy that evolves on a project and the magic that happens. Working with my guest today, Natascha Polomski, has been that experience. As a business partner, study partner, and friend, we've had many deep and engaging discussions on a variety of topics. All these pull forward ideas and opportunities, create the opportunity for awareness and a change of viewpoints. And today we're exploring just that. What is the joy of challenges? How does a situation transform when we remove limits and provide the space for change to occur? We are starting season 2 with a deeper dive into the power of bioenergetic wellness tools and how those tools can transform lives and well-being. Thank you for coming along for this journey of discovery. This is season 2, episode 1, The Joy of Challenges, Removing Limits and Creating Change with Natascha Polomski. Welcome, Natascha, to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a long time coming, I'd say.
I know, we just had to wait for that right topic to come in there and to come forward. So let's continue the tradition that started in season 1, which is what cup of tea are you drinking today? And because we're business partners with Tea with Intention, you and I have different ones that pop up at different times. What did you end up with for today?
Well, as usual, when I'm challenged, I end up with releasing the warrior, holding back getting rid of all my balance. Sorry, I have to say that. I'm releasing all the obstacles in my way, which usually I put up. So that's where it comes from. It's always the same tea.
And do you have a special mug today?
PI mug with PI clay on it. It unfortunately doesn't work so well with my background. So
for those people who are listening on the podcast, Natascha just held up a lovely mug that comes from Prince Edward Island, and the soil is embedded within the paint. So that's what she was showing. Yes. I know it's a favorite mug for me too. So I ended up with Rising Tides, which is also the blend that I typically get. And I chose a similar kind of mug because I've got seashells on the side of my mug today. And Rising Tides is same for me. When there's different challenges coming in and I need to find flow and balance, then that's when Rising Tide shows up. So cheers as we start season 2. Okay, so Natascha, your specialty in bioenergetic wellness is sound and frequency, and to provide balance and flow to the body. And as I even wrote that, it was like, that's not even correct. You have a wonderful way of bringing around ideas and really helping people to understand how to be aware and the tools that they need to be aware. You want to explain a little bit about what it is that is your specialty?
Well, maybe more about the background. So I come from a business background, basically. That's where I majored in marketing, and I got myself into burnout in my 20s, and I lived with burnout for 20 years, not realizing how shut down I was. And getting into the bioenergetic wellness tools and learning, especially the muscle monitoring, was my way out. The tea was another big part of that, because I could support myself energetically for the day with just having a cup of tea in the morning, and things just started shifting around. But with that, coming out of the burnout, which basically shuts your brain down, it's in survival mode, so you're not there really, you're just surviving, you're not living. um the last couple of years have changed my perception of things and my viewpoint on things, because a lot of things that I put in my way is my brain. Sometimes it's my brain trying to keep me where I am, to keep me safe, not allowing me to realize it's not really a safe place where I am, because I'm only reacting, I'm not responding. While nowadays it's more, I realize, okay, here's my safe space, which my brain thinks, but when I tie into all my other senses, then the awareness comes in. And I'm probably already going way further than you want me to, because there's the awareness. I'm sorry.
No, that's the perfect point, was just when you bring in that awareness, what it means for you. Because you're right, if you're in fight or flight, where you've been just trying to survive and you're reacting to everything that goes on around you just so that you can be coping, you're not aware. Because if you were aware, you would be listening to all of the clues that were coming from either aches or pains in your body, or what the senses were trying to tell you.
Yeah. And that goes to the point to realize that my need for checking things. So I was OCD. I was to the point that I went home 5 times just to check if the stove was off, even though it was already off. And the muscle monitoring gave me the knowledge that I did it because my body remembered, my brain didn't. So that's where the awareness came in, that OCD basically is a way for the brain to cope and to keep control, because it can't control what it doesn't remember.
Mhm.
And things like that, tiny things like that, come to mind. And when I look back, it's quite astounding where I am today than I was even 2 years ago. There has been a huge learning curve. There has been a huge, um, I don't want to say awakening, because that's not really it. It's basically going back to myself, finding my inner self, and having dialogues with myself in a way that it's just checking in, reflecting on, and then working out of that, and not just going by, okay, my brain says you have to do this, you have to do that, and then not questioning it. So basically today I question almost everything I do. And if it's just in a small way of asking, am I happy with what I've done here? And my
Mhm.
place, I decided in 2016 I wanted to be happy, quit my job, and I'm happy. So that's the point. For the most part, there's downsides too, yes, but for the most part, I choose happy, and I chose that. I'm choosing that every day.
Mhm. Mhm. And so part of that whole process, um, you and I ended up in a discussion as I was going back to school. Then you decided that might be a good place for you to go, and which has been lovely because we've been able to support each other along that journey. But also, it's really provided us with a way to really deep dive into what that awareness really means. Do you want to just
Um,
talk a little bit about some of that part?
it's funny as you say I decided, because in my perspective it's still that you made me go, but that's okay. I'm grateful for that, because starting to study in a totally different field, um there has been so much input in ideas and situations and things that you've been put through. But even that, the first course that I took in my studies took me a year, because I ran into major energetic blocks. There were things said um to me that created energetic blocks that didn't allow me to go forward. And I didn't realize they were there. I knew people had said that to me, but I never realized their input. And that's one of the big parts, is like, you are we are so careless with our words. We are putting something out to somebody else, and we're not even taking responsibility for what can happen in the other person. So that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last years. And I think our raising bioenergetic awareness workshop wouldn't have happened out like without the studies before that, because that was the knowledge that came out of that. Like every training that I took, every educational part in my life has been a part where I can draw from. If that is Therapeutic Touch taught me I'm not responsible for outcome, or I'm not taking responsibility for outcome in a matter, as I do what I can to my best ability for another person, with another person, and then I let it go, because a lot of things are not in my hand and are not up to me, so I leave it up to my healing partner to change, and it's theirs. I open the field for them, and I might provide some needed push or pull or whatever you want to call it. Basically, just we have a nice saying: we open the no, we create the circumstances for the innate healing potential to occur. So this is what I can do. I can create the circumstances, but I can't create the healing. The healing has to come from inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the inside, has to come from inside. I can tell you what I want. If you don't believe it, it's yours. It's always your thing to question, to discuss with yourself or self, and then find your own point of view, and that's totally fine. We don't have to have the same point of view, and you know us, we don't always agree, but we agree to disagree, and that's fine. And then we come to a common conclusion and make it ours, and that it works, right? And
Yeah.
that was a big learning process, not holding control over another person, but just being responsible for my part, and leaving the other person their space, and giving them their space, and giving them the opportunity to bring it to the table, whatever they have, and then incorporate it to what I have. Yeah. So that was, I think that was one of the biggest parts in the last 2 years to get to that point. And I don't know, from your perspective, working with me, I know I was pretty bad in the beginning, and I take full responsibility for that because that was my input.
No, it's always a mutual journey, right? It's a journey of discovery, and I think one of the lovely gifts that we've had in pursuing our education has been, we have turned over every rock, we've questioned every piece, we've looked at assumptions people have made, and gone, is the assumption correct? Are we doing this right? Or are we just following along blindly because somebody else told us it should be done this way? And in that process, you and I have both, we've gone off in different directions. We've come back together. We've discussed things. We've gone off again and come back, which is completely supportive of growth and development. And both of us with the opportunity to say, I think there's another way we could be doing this. I think there's another way we could explain it. And I know with our work, we've been trying to really be succinct with how we're saying everything, and getting it down into language that everyone can use and understand. So it's not just people who are trained in bioenergetic wellness tools, but just the general person who just wants well-being and self-care. And how can we take these incredible tools that have assisted us in so many wonderful ways, and how can we bring it down to that most basic component? And I think that journey has been a great one of discovery. So
Yeah. Yeah. And as I said before, the thing is to you grow, and you grow into yourself, and that's what I found. I've never had that with anything else. So you're gonna see a cattail come through. Sorry. The thing is that with anything else that I've done so far, it was never to the point that it gave me that much insight into myself. And it never like whatever classes you take, for even the sound classes, when I took them at that time, I wasn't ready to really dive into my own stuff, and really discover myself, and figure out who am I, and what do I want to do, and what are my principles, and what am I allowing to how much space do I give others, and how much do I set up borders and say this is mine and this is yours and that's fine. And coming into that is really interesting. But again, you can't do that if you don't first, if you don't talk to yourself, and if you don't reflect on what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So you and I talked about the airplane and
One
inner
of my favorite
care.
quotes. Yeah.
Do you want to just share that? Because
Yeah.
for those people listening, we really want to bring forward some of the key things that we've discovered in our own journeys, and make sure that people
So
have it.
one of the things that as a healer, you or anybody who takes care of another person, let's say it this way, because you don't have to be a healer to take care of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
All of us tend to forget that if we are not 100%, we can't give 100%. And if you're constantly giving from yourself without replenishing yourself, it's not working. And my little saying for that is always, well, remember the airplane? You're sitting in the airplane, the oxygen mask comes down, there's no more oxygen in the airplane. What do? Well, the typical caregiver would go and put it on everybody else. Without oxygen, how much time do you have? Like 2 minutes, if at all, if you can keep your breath that long. So how many people can you put a mask on in that time? Maybe 1, 2. But if you put the mask on first, you can probably save about 15 people because you have the oxygen to put it on others. That's the point. And that's a very, very good point to make for anybody who doesn't consider self-care important. Self-care is important. Self-care can take any kind of way, picture, whatever you can consider. If it's just getting out in the sun, that's self-care. It's just making yourself a priority, and we don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And then people too try to take on the emotions of other people, or they in their wanting to sympathize or empathize with someone's situation, they try to pull that up, hoping that they'll pull some of that pain away or take some of the angst out. And then that's just a deplete that happens on them. So that's like taking all the taking the oxygen and then blowing it away from you instead of saying,
Exactly.
oh, I'll even give myself oxygen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the interesting part in that is that thinking about all the things that have gone on for the last 2 years, like no matter what it was, if it was private life or if it was with Can Be Well or work worse, anytime I said no, I don't do it because I'm depleting myself, things change around, and I'm still involved with those things, but in a different way, and it has become easier. But just having the guts to stand up and say no, it doesn't mean that you let somebody else go. It doesn't mean that you're not there for somebody else. It just means that you're not taking responsibility for their life and you're not carrying them. Because often when we try to too much for somebody else, take their burden and whatever, we all have a lesson to learn somewhere. And as hard as that might be, sometimes people have to go through hard times in order to grow in it. And I love that choose love motto of not saying post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic growth, because it changes the whole perspective. You're not bound by your trauma. You can grow out of trauma. And that means too that as a supporter or facilitator or caregiver, they have to do their own work. The person you're helping has to do their own work. And that sometimes means tough love and stepping away.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so we had another interesting conversation last week, which was about the Formula One pit stop crew. And I love this one because it really, the growth we've had with the teams that we've actually built. And I'm going to refer to it that way because we belong to several teams and we sit on those teams together,
Yeah.
but we are including different people in our conversations, different people in writing, creating, and it's just so enriched us. So do you want to explain a little bit what that means with the pit crew?
Yeah, so that comes from my studies as marketing, as major, for my bachelor. In Germany at
Okay,
that time was just called a diploma.
just hold on. If you just repeat that, we had a blip in there.
Okay. So in that comes out of my studies in my 20s, or the idea that we're talking about with Formula One pit stop. When I studied marketing or majored in marketing, one of our teachers told us, the thing is that if you want to optimize a process, you're not bound by looking just at that process or just even in your area of interest. Sometimes it's more beneficial to go outside and look at something else to optimize what you're doing. And the example that they brought was an assembly line. Somebody looked into optimizing an assembly line, and in order for them to optimize the time scheduling and setting that up in the correct way so it would be perfect, well, was perfect, optimized. um, they looked on into the Formula One pit stop for either changing a tire or gassing up the Formula One cars, the racing cars, because they need milliseconds in order to win their race. So if your pit stop is too slow, you lost already. And so looking at that process, the pit stop, they applied the basic how do you say, the basics of it into their assembly line, and they ended up cutting their time in half, which nobody did before. It comes to show that if we're stuck in what we're doing, we don't see anything else. And like my meditation, the joy of challenge, if you change the perspective of your challenge, it becomes a possibility, because that's what it is. It gives you room to grow. It gives you room to change something that's not working or that's not optimized, and you can go and do that a different way. And yeah, and when we were talking, I said, well, I don't we were talking about something that needed to be optimized, and I said, well, look at that, they did that. And usually we don't think about that. We go, oh, we have this, and this is what we deal with, and this is where we need to be, but keep forgetting that this is just this bit. But what about everything outside? Whatever, there's so much around it that can be used as an example or as a reference point. And yeah, so that's where the pit stop came in.
But I really love the fact that when you focused in on what did that one job need to be in order to be so efficient, and what did the other job need to be. And sometimes it's a fuzzy job, what people are doing. And sometimes people just don't know what everybody else is doing. They haven't paid attention. Conversations didn't get shared. There's just all these ways that difficulties can come in. And so when we start to really look at working with teams, because I think we've grown so much because we have been combining with these teams. And when we start to look at what are the key pieces of our team, and then who does the best jobs at different things, how we can really, again, optimize it and bring it down to our best key pieces.
The thing is, if you have one person with the knowledge and that person goes, the knowledge is lost.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working with a team, there is multiple sides of a cube coming in, let's say it this way, or an obstruct coming in. And if you have multiple sides on them, if one part falls, it's not as bad as if the whole falls apart. And well, we know that from our own experience, that if and that comes back down to the caregiver being careful and making it easy for somebody else, it doesn't help, because in the end that knowledge is missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can make you, from my own experience, if I enable somebody to wallow in their quagmire and not to deal with what they have to deal with, if I make it easy for them, usually they will fall back into that in no time. There's no benefit. if it's tough love and be honest and that's my motto. I'm sometimes maybe too honest, I don't know, but I'd rather be honest and tell you to your face if you're doing something that's not working for you, and you can change that yourself instead of going and fixing it for you, because that doesn't help you, because then you don't get the point that there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so let's move from this part of conversation over to another lovely piece, because this is something that a lot of people are working with right now, and the buzzword is mindfulness.
Yeah.
And it has lots of connotations, it has lots of different ways of dealing with it. So you and I have talked about it. Is conscious awareness the same as mindfulness?
For me, not. It's a step further, because with mindfulness you still react. You're not responding, while when you are aware, your decisions are based on way more information, and you can actually go and make a decision and have a response to something instead of just instinctively reacting. If I look again, if I think just from, let's say I'm angry about something and I look at the situation, I will always be angry about the situation because I come from my perspective. But if I look at the same situation from the other side or from the outside, I might realize that the other person has a right to do what they do, and I don't have the right to react the way I react, because I'm reacting with anger and with my lens instead of reacting with neutrality and allowing for a real dialogue. So that's the biggest point where mindfulness is not enough for me. And if I talk about anything, I usually don't use the word mindful, because it's not serving you. It's not enough. It's a step in the right direction, but it has to be so much more.
Mm-hmm. And then when we're talking about awareness, then you do have deep breathing. You're aware of that deep breath, but you also have centering and grounding. How are you connected to the earth? Then you have, now what do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? How do you feel about a situation, rather than how are you going to react to the situation? It just keeps, I don't know, adding the richness to an experience, really.
It's like you're going from a simple photo to a holographic scene you're standing in. That's basically, you are immersed in the whole situation. You are. And again, the reflection is a big part of that, because when you go back into something and look at it from a different angle, you might see that you haven't been right in what you're doing, or you could have handled it differently, or you can go and say, I'm grateful that I did it the right way. If you didn't do it the right way, you can forgive yourself, or you have the possibility to go to the other person and say, I'm sorry that if I overstepped, and can we work on that, and please let me know. And you're not ending in a disagreement, or in creating a huge blockage with the other person, or a huge block with the other person. You're creating actually it's so funny, because my screensaver just came up, and you're creating fertile ground that can grow stuff. So it's just, sorry, it just popped up. But that's the point of it, that you are actually you're not shutting things off, you're building things when you work with that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, it's a great thing if you can get to that point. One of our students, I don't know if you remember that, she took, I think, the second class of RBA, Raising Bioenergetic Awareness, with us, and she is an empath to the point that she is not able to deal with people, and she didn't know that it was not hers. So during the class, she all of a sudden was able to really look at her emotions and look at the sensations that she had in herself, and realized that they were not her own. She was just an empath picking up on other people's emotions and anger and fright and happiness. Well, happiness is the best one of it, but she picked up on that, and she didn't know it wasn't hers. And once she learned that it was not hers, she was able to create a space for her to be safe, still receiving that, but not being influenced with those emotions, and being
Mhm.
able to see, this is mine and this is theirs, and I don't need to act out or wallow or despair on anything because it's not mine, right?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
gives you a totally different perspective of life when you
Mhm.
all of a sudden have something you don't have to deal with.
Exactly. That kind of segues us over towards intention,
Yeah.
because a lot of people talk about, oh, if they're going to use affirmations, or they have some key phrases that they repeat every day, but there actually is so much more to intention. And you're just describing how when you bring in awareness, how much more you can actually play with intention and really make the power of intention come forward for someone. Do you want to play with that a little bit more?
While you were saying that, if you take an affirmation, that's wording that has been given to you most times. It's not that you find it yourself. Most times we go for a book and we find an affirmation. So an affirmation, if you compare it with mindfulness and awareness, the affirmation is the mindfulness, while the intention is the awareness, is the affirmation you work with, that you really make yourself and make it your own, and you mean it when you say it because it's yours. It's not just something that you read off. And that's where again it becomes so much more. When you set intentions, then you set your focus to a certain goal, a certain achievement. And it can be tiny things, it can be big things. And if you look at the work from Lynn McTaggart, there have been huge achievements with intention setting. Um, Personally, for my life, I know when we start a meeting and we set intention before, we usually achieve with our meeting what we want. We get to the point. It is like in the beginning when we started to have meetings with the board, it was like everywhere and nowhere, and nobody was at the same point. And then we started setting intentions and goals and did a balance for that. And it made the whole group coherent, and it made us all work in one as one. Let's say it this way: all different opinions, all different ideas, all different, but we worked as a group. It
Mhm.
brought us together. It made us resonate. Where we're back to frequency. The other part with intention is too that when I set an intention, I'm committing. I'm committing to something. I'm not just putting it out there. For instance, when I send out an invoice, because I have a company, different company too, and I send out invoices, and I have the feeling that it might be disputed, justified or not, I usually pack my invoices into love. So I send them out with the intention of love. I rarely have somebody disputing anything. They might question it, which is fine because nothing is written in stone and I make mistakes too. But the point is, it's never in an aggressive tone. Nobody's offended. I'm not offended when something comes back. And before I started doing that, I was always dreading that they would maybe come back and question me. And nowadays,
Mhm.
it's no, this is what it is, and I can explain it to you. And if we disagree, then we find a compromise. That's fine. But for me, setting up the love intention, going into anything that would be usually an argument or where there could be a discord, it might be discussion, but it usually is not discord or anger and all of those. So it levels the playing ground, makes it easier.
Mhm. Beautiful. You had some really good words in there, and I liked your explanation of the mindfulness, um, with the goal setting and the intention, which is the awareness, and that little piece in there. And I think that's a really good nugget for people to kind of hold on to and realize. And if
It
they've been
comes
using those tools, to be able to say, can I shift them to optimize them in a much better way?
Yeah, it comes down to consciousness. It comes down to consciously deciding what you want consciously. It's almost like writing an agreement. You're signing an agreement with the intention. You're committing, and again, when I have the awareness of the situation, finding a agreement is easier than stumbling into it and not knowing the whole picture.
And one piece I like to hold on to too is the quality, because some people forget about that. They've got that goal on the end, and I'm just use this as the easier piece. You know, I want to make $1 million, but what does that mean when you have $1 million? You know, what is the quality of life you're looking for? What do you want to feel like? What is it that you haven't been doing that's going to allow you to do? And is it going to give you the richness that you're looking for? Not the rich moneyness, but the richness of living.
Which is the awareness, basically. It comes down to, it's not just a goal, it's an intention, and the awareness of what is my real intention. Same with the money, same with losing weight. That's one of my favorites. I want to lose weight, and then you go, yeah, what does it look like? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and then you say, what do you see when you lose weight? How do you see yourself? What do you see in? Yeah, I see bonfire and people around and dancing and whatever. So the goal is not losing the weight. The goal is the social life, the community, being out there. But they don't have the awareness. All they see is they think they need to lose weight to be that, because you don't need to lose weight to be social. If you're aware of yourself, you will know your worth, and you will stand your worth, and that makes you attractive, no matter if you are overweight like me or not, or it doesn't matter. The point is, you need to be aware of yourself, and if you don't know yourself, you can't be aware of yourself, and that reflects to the outside. So you're not yourself, you're not consistent, you're not present, and you're not reflecting to the outside what you want to see inside.
Natascha, I know you and I we can go on. We have lovely discussions, and we have great opportunities that come up with the different aspects of the organizations we work with. So if we stop here for today, is there any last piece that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we get out there?
Choose to be happy, reflect on yourself, and be aware of what is yours and what is not.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And tradition for us is to close up with a little note about dance. So is there anything you would share about what dance means for you?
Happiness. What else?
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, no. Happiness. What else?
Happiness. Okay.
I dance when I'm happy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would just like to reflect for the listeners to think about how you might dance from the inside. And if you are noticing that maybe dance is kind of missing on the inside, see if you can lock into maybe one little spot inside that might be able to do that first bit of movement, and then let that movement kind of grow inside until eventually it takes over, and you can find the happiness and joy that Natascha is talking about. We have a couple of things we've mentioned as we've been talking. So just so that people know, Natascha, you mentioned Choose Love. So we have the Choose Love movement, and the website for that is chooselovemovement.org, where you can find lots of resources. We also talked about Can Be Well, the Canadian Association of Bioenergetic Wellness, of which Natascha and I have spent a fair bit of time and effort in. And Natascha has been beautiful in that tonight we have recorded a session, an actual meditation on the joy of challenges. And what we'll be doing is adding that to the Can Be Well YouTube channel. And that's a place where you'll be able then to go use the meditation, but also please check out all the resources that we've put together for you to be able to access self-care and well-being tools. And Natascha, how can they find you? Because if they want to know more about sound, frequency, intention, and all the lovely things that you do, You want to share where you are?
The easiest way probably is to find me on Facebook under turnupthefrequency.com, or Raising Bioenergetic Awareness, which is Michelle and me together. But most times I'm answering on that. Both are on Facebook. Turn Up the Frequency is one word on Facebook, and Raising Bioenergetic Awareness comes also as, I believe, as one when you put it behind facebook.com. Otherwise, I have a website which I have to admit has not been taken care of. It's on the list, but yeah, just reach out, Facebook Messenger. Fine, I'll be happy to answer and see what I can help with.
And our teas that we mentioned is a tea-intention .square.site, and we have all of our teas listed there. So we have over a dozen, so we would love for you to check that out. And today we were sipping away at Releasing the Warrior and Rising Tides. So that's another option. And I just thank you so much, Natascha. You have been such an incredible inspiration, and it has been an absolute delight to be studying with you. I'm truly honored to have 2 of our courses accepted at Akamai University and to be able to share the professorship with you of being able to share our lovely course. I say that because you and I, both as we've been teaching it in its regular form, not at university level form, you and I, neither one of us would miss a single class because we didn't want to miss all the exploration fun that was in the course. And that's just been so delightful.
It has been a great journey, and I can't wait to see where we're going from here.
So for those people that might be listening and think, gee, what does a university course look like in that regard? So it's Raising Bioenergetic Awareness, but you can find it at Akamai University. And that's where both of us are studying. I'm working on integrative health in my dissertation, and yours is in?
Still complementary and alternative medicine, hasn't been shifted yet, and it's energy dynamics is mine.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Natascha, and thank you to the listeners for the start of this season, and we look forward to more in-depth conversations about what happens with bioenergetic wellness and our well-being. You've been listening to Michelle Greenwell and Natascha Polomski. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. Good night.